Children, you would have observed the video or watched the video made by Jamina teacher on the lesson Sultan Ghiyasuddin in the Qazi's court. Let us continue with the lesson. I will be reading it with you. Sultan Ghiyasuddin in the Qazi's court. Hundreds of years ago, in the eastern province of Bengal, Sultan Ghiyasuddin Azam Shah ruled the land. His capital was Sonargaon. Sultan Ghiyasuddin was a good ruler. He ruled wisely and well. He respected men of learning. He had a deep regard for law. Men of learning means scholars. One day, while practicing with the bow and arrows, he accidentally wounded the only son of a poor widow. The wounded boy did not survive. Weeping and wailing, the poor widow went to the Qazi and told him what had happened. Accidentally, please check the spelling. Have written the right spelling. Survive means live, did not survive. Wounded, to get hurt. Widow is a person or a lady who has lost her husband. Weeping and wailing means to cry loudly. Qazi is the judge. The Qazi was an honest and upright man. Upright means a person who is full of justice. He sent an officer to summon the Sultan to his court. When the officer reached the palace, the guards stopped him and inquired about his business. When they learned that he had come to serve a summons on the Sultan, they were shocked. They refused to let him go inside the palace. Why do you think they were shocked? The Sultan is a ruler. How can anyone even call him, right? How can anyone even pull him to justice? So they were shocked and they refused to allow him to enter the palace. The officer was now in a fix. The guards did not allow him to enter the palace. But he knew that he could not return without serving the summons. The Qazi would not take him back. He had to find a way of reaching the Sultan somehow. What could he do? He thought and thought. The officer was now in a fix. Now in a fix means in a difficult situation. When you don't know what to do, when you're totally confused, that is called as a fix. Now in a fix, it's an idiom. Then serving the summons means to give the notice. जैसे हम बोलते हैं warrant, to call a person. Because he knew that the Qazi will punish him. So he could not go back to the palace without giving the summons to the Qazi. So he was wondering, how should I do it? He struck on a brilliant idea. At last, he began to sound the azan, the call for the prayer. You can see here in the picture, he's calling for he's doing the azan, call of prayer. Just outside the palace. It was not yet time for the prayer. When the Sultan heard the loud, untimely call, he was greatly surprised. He ordered that the man giving the call should be brought before him immediately. So when he gave the call for the azan, you have heard, right? From the masjid, the call for the prayer comes. So when this man was doing it at the wrong time, at the untimely hour, the Sultan was surprised and requested the guards or ordered the guards to bring him into the palace. His soldiers rushed out of the palace gates, caught the officer and took him to the Sultan within moments. Within moments means immediately. When the officer knelt before the Sultan, he was trembling with fear. But he mustered all his courage and explained why he had given the call for azan. Then, with shaking hands, he gave the summons to the Sultan. Sultan Ghiyasuddin took it without making any comment. He read the summons and told the officer to go back to the Qazi. He announced that he would appear in the Qazi's court the next day. Mustered all his courage, matlab pura himmat jutana. In Hindi we say na, so to gather all the courage. Shaking hands. Why you think his hands were shaking? Because he was scared. Right? Next. The next morning, the Sultan got ready to appear before the Qazi. He hid a sharp sword in his robe and set out. The courtroom was packed with people. Everyone was eager to see what would happen. The Qazi entered and took his place on the high seat of honor. In a little while, Sultan Ghiyasuddin entered the courtroom. Everyone stood up to show respect to the Sultan. But the Qazi did not get up. The Sultan stood in the docks and the trial began. So now the next day morning, the Sultan got ready, and while he was getting ready, he hid a sharp sword in his robe and left. Set out means to leave. The courtroom was packed. Everyone was eager. The idiom, all ears. You want to know what's happening. Eager to see what was happening. The Qazi entered, and when a person of respect enters a room, everyone stands up. But this time the Qazi did not stand up for the Sultan. Why you think he did not stand up? He did not stand up because today the Sultan was an offender. He was a person who has committed a wrong deed. So the Qazi did not stand up. The Sultan stood in the docks. What is docks? In the courtroom, jahan par the person who does wrong stands. That is called as a docks. And the lawyer asks him question. Trial began means the court proceedings started. The widow presented her complaint. The Qazi took note of all the evidence and in a grave voice addressed the Sultan. Now, what is the meaning of evidence? Proof. Grave means serious voice. Address means to speak to. You are guilty of causing the death of the only son of this poor widow. According to the law, you must pay a fine for this offense. I order you to pay that without delay. So what does the Sultan tell the Qazi? That you are guilty means तुमने कुछ गलत काम किया है. So you have to be punished for the wrong deed. So he says you must pay a fine to the widow. So the Sultan accepted the judgment and apologized, means to say sorry, to the widow. He paid the fine immediately. The widow was satisfied. She was happy because the person who had done wrong was punished properly. To make a person realize that he has done something wrong means brought home to the offender. When the case was over, the Qazi got up from his high seat of honor. You know that the Sultan is a ruler. The Qazi is still the judge. But once the case was over, the Sultan once again becomes the important person. So the Qazi gets up and tells him, now you have to take my seat. He bowed to the Sultan and requested him to take his seat. The Sultan then drew the hidden sword from his robes and told the Qazi, I am happy that you did not waver in your duty. You did not hesitate to punish me. Otherwise, I would have beheaded you with this sword. So when the Sultan, after the case, the Sultan tells the Qazi, I'm hiding a sword in my robe. And you know why? Because if you had not done your duty, you would have hesitated in your duty, because the Qazi could have got scared and said, Bapre, main kaise punish karoon Sultan ko, But the Qazi was not afraid. He did his duty. He did not waver and he punished the Sultan. So if he had not done that, the Sultan was ready to behead him. Behead means to cut off the person's head. The Qazi then put his hand under his cushion where the Sultan was seated and brought out a whip. Whip in Hindi what we call as koda. And he said, Your Majesty, I am happy because you obeyed the law. Otherwise, I would have whipped you in this court. So the Qazi felt that the Sultan, being a king, he could have said, "Nay, you cannot punish me. I am the Sultan. I am ruling this kingdom." So if he had done that, the Qazi was ready to whip him in the court. So both of them had great regard for the law. The Sultan then got up and embraced the Qazi. "Thank God, we both did our duty," he said. Everyone present in the courtroom praised the two great men. Means they were full of praise because even one was a judge and the other one was a sultan. They felt that no one is above the law. Whoever does wrong has to be punished. The meanings, new words that you have learnt: wailing, crying and sobbing long and loudly; upright, honest; summon, to order someone to come, to send for someone; summons is a written notice ordering someone to appear in the court; fix, here fix means in a difficult or awkward situation; docks, an enclosed place in the court of law for the accused person to stand, means accused means the person who has done something wrong, जो हम हिंदी में मुजरिम बोलते हैं. Offense, crime, a wrong deed. Offender, a person who has done something wrong or illegal. Waver, falter, hesitate, to become unsure. Exercise. Answer the following questions with yes or no. Did the Sultan want to kill the widow's son? Do you think so, children? No, he didn't want to. It was an accident. Did the officer give the summons to the Sultan? Yes, he did. Did the Sultan appear in the Qazi's court? Yes. Was the Qazi's judgment fair? Yes, it was. Did the Sultan obey the law? Yes, he obeyed. Was the Sultan happy with the Qazi? Yes, he was. Give reasons for the following. The Sultan hid a sword in his robe. Why do you think he hid a sword? To behead the Qazi if he had wavered in his duty. If the Qazi had wavered in his duty, the Sultan would have beheaded him. The Qazi hid a whip under his cushion. Why did he do so? To whip the Sultan if he had disobeyed the law. The widow was satisfied because the offender was punished. Everyone praised the Sultan and the Qazi because both of them had high regard for the law. The opposites, eastern is western, respect, disrespect, untimely, timely, accepted, rejected, appear, disappear, present, absent,